First things first, Kate. We had a lot of fun last week talking about horror stories of my drinking.
That's pretty bad, huh?
You're an asshole.
And I'm just going to make it very clear to everyone who's listening that I no longer drink. I didn't make that clear last episode, okay?
I think if people knew exactly what you got up to when you were drunk, they would be relieved to hear that you no longer drink.
Yeah, I don't want to present the idea that that was like fun times and something to aspire to. I laugh about it now because I've been sober for 5 years and I'm very anti-booze. Mm-hmm. But I'm not straight edge, okay? If it's legal in the state I'm in, then I live that Cali sober life. But anyway, now that I'm in Indiana, I guess I am straight edge. So here we go. We're ready to talk about the pod.
No, we're not.
Howdy, hold heads. Kurt Money here.
We're ready to talk about the pod?
Yeah, we're breaking down episode 54 today. Okay, I guess we'll talk about Dateline again. All right.
I'm Lester Holt.
Howdy, whole heads. Kurt Money here, alongside my co-host,
Kateline.
And we are here to discuss a brand new Dateline, once again hosted by AC. Full-on hosted by AC this time.
Here's Andrea Canning with Deadly Omission.
IMDb description. This episode revisits the chilling case of John Peake, who is linked to the murder of 2 wives, raising questions about his motives and the dark secrets behind his relationship. Good stuff.
Yeah.
I might have sat on that second wife thing, even though it's kind of clear with the start. I would have sat on that. I would have said, like, until something was revealed in his past. I feel like they do that move sometimes.
Yeah, I don't know if it's obvious yet, but he the murderer.
Yeah, that's true. And, you know, this is a good example of when it's totally fine that we know the murderer right off the bat. Don't you agree?
Mm-hmm. I do, yeah.
Because I really love this episode. And even this Yahoo, I mean, I'm not trying to give any credit to the chameleon John Smith. But this guy's a wannabe chameleon, I think. And I think he wasn't even as good as that loser. Would you agree with that?
Better looking.
Okay, fair. All right, well, give me your overall thoughts. Good stuff?
I liked this. I texted you right when I started it, and I knew immediately that it was in Atlanta.
Yeah, you in Atlanta, huh? This is like your second home. A place you've never lived, but you so want to, and you know it so well.
I can always tell that it's Atlanta by the architecture of the homes and the foliage. Wow. It's a dead giveaway.
That is nuts. When you said you knew it, and then you were like, yeah, and it's in Smyrna. As if I've supposed to have heard of Smyrna before. Like, you are just like a local. You're a freaking Atlanta townie.
You just gotta know. You gotta know all the arrondissements around Atlanta.
Okay. So yeah, this story takes place October 2005. I loved how they started this story with the purse in the parking lot.
It was definitely mysterious.
Yeah, and like it was just a good switch, and I think it was a good way to kick off that this is going to be Friday Fatty of us getting a few lulls with this lame-o who messed up a bunch. I mean, look, he successfully murdered 3 people, all right? But he's bad at it, and he sucks. So anyway, we open up on a parking lot at an apartment complex in Atlanta. Ronnie Myers gets home from betting at the dog tracks, and he finds a purse loose in the parking lot. And he's like, oh, maybe somebody had too much to drink, dropped their purse, whatever. He hangs on to it overnight. Next morning, he wakes up and he goes through it. And the guy looks in the purse and he looks at the ID and it says Casey Peake. And then he starts going through her phone, sees a John Peake, and there was this I love you note to a John in the purse. So he calls this number, and what happens on the other line?
John Peake answers, and he tells him that he found this purse belonging to
Casey Peake.
Casey Peake. And John, we don't hear this phone call, but John allegedly is confused and surprised of why her purse would be in this guy's parking lot. And he agrees to meet up with him to exchange it. And it's his wife's purse. And he hasn't talked to her in a day, I guess. So he's like, okay, I'll come get it and go see where she is and why she left her purse somewhere.
Right. So he comes and picks up the purse. And he's off. And then shortly...
Interesting that there was only one John in her phone.
No kidding, right?
I've got like 40 Johns.
I love that there was a love note in there that the killer did not expect to help pin them down, right?
Totally.
Because that was pretty awesome. Like a posthumous, yes, right on, Casey. So anyway, John Peake comes to pick up this purse, goes back to his house. Minutes later, a 911 call comes in from an apartment complex down the street. And now... We hear this guy on the phone, and he is crushed.
Front of 911.
Yes. This is John Peak.
Okay, what's going on?
I just found my wife dead. She said somebody, please.
He's discovered his wife, Casey, laying in bed, dead. And he's distraught. He doesn't know how it happened. Am I right in that he didn't check to see if how she was... He just felt that she was cold. He didn't go exploring her cause of death.
No, he said like she's stiff, but I don't know. That's all he can tell him.
Right.
But it's funny because this guy's really crying on the phone. Doesn't he sound like just a heartbroken husband?
Sure, even though he doesn't live with his wife.
Sure doesn't.
He's real heartbroken.
And the cops show up to the scene of the crime. They go in there to find Casey Peak's body in her bed, blanket over her, but not over her face. And of course, the cops look around, and what's the first thing they think? When they look at the status of the apartment.
It looks like a staged robbery, maybe. There's drawers pulled out, but nothing is missing. Nothing at all. It's just completely faked. And we see this all the time.
We see it so much. Like, I just want to, like, any aspiring murderers out there, opening a drawer does not sell the idea of a burglary. That's not all it takes to make it look like somebody got robbed, is to open all the drawers. Like, that's...
You need to take the things in the drawers.
Yeah, or take a TV or a 05 DVD player or something. Like, every time, all they do is open drawers everywhere, and they see through it right away. I feel like sometimes Dateline plays it. They don't reveal that it's fake yet because they like to do that in another act. But I think the detective in this made it clear.
It was just stage crime scene 101.
That, like, they knew right when they walked in there, shit was set up.
I have a question, though.
Yeah.
How do they know that nothing was taken? Because they don't have inventory of what was there before. There could have been some expensive jewelry in one of those drawers, and it's gone.
Yeah, I guess they're thinking because it's still full. Like, none of the jewelry drawers were empty at all, right? I think we see a few of them. But I'm with you. How the hell do they know?
Unless John was like... John could have lied and said, like, oh, her really expensive necklace is missing. But he didn't do that. Wait, who am I? But he didn't do that, did he?
J-Mank.
Well, you didn't do that, did you?
Good J-Mank there. Okay, so this detective, Ron Waddell, is talking to AC, and he's the one who first talks to John back at the police station. Is that where we're at? Mm-hmm. So John's willing to go back and talk to the cops, and he's being open and honest, according to him. What are they talking about?
Their relationship status. Because John and Casey are married, but they're separated, and they've been separated for a while. So much so that he has been seriously dating someone else. And he's honest about having a girlfriend, but he also says that he and Casey were reconciling and they were going to get back together.
She wanted to get back together faster than I do.
The cops are like, she knew you had a girlfriend, but she wanted to get back together.
Yeah, they word it funny because they're like, all right, I know this would be a weird relationship question, but you're going out with this girl on Tuesday, and then you're going out to eat with your wife on Friday. He's like, I didn't know who I was going with. Does that make sense?
I'm not sure who I'm going with right now. Does that make sense?
Not 100%.
And they're like, no, it doesn't, John. And it's clear that these women don't really know about each other. Like, the Tuesday night girl thinks that he's getting a divorce.
Yeah, that's Lisa.
And the Friday night girl thinks they're getting back together.
And that's Casey. Now, it's really funny because you're right in that he's very upfront about these two women in his lives to the cops. But as you can tell, it's because he's really trying to point some fingers, and he's trying to plant some seeds for who might be responsible.
Well, as it turns out, she's got a gun.
He's like, well, I don't know where Lisa is, and she grew up with guns, and she loves guns, and one time she chased me into a room and had a gun, or something. Like, he paints this picture that Lisa is like a real wild card, right?
And that she's really jealous of his wife.
Do you think she's able to do this, capable of murdering her?
I don't think so.
That's kind of a big doubt. I don't think.
3 hours pass in this interview, and this is what AC calls the ultimate omission.
It is the ultimate omission.
Yes, ma'am. 100%.
But the episode is called Deadly Omission.
Deadly Omission.
I like ultimate omission myself. It kind of flows better. But what is the ultimate omission that the Detective Waddell gets out of him right now?
Oh.
That just under 10 years ago, his first wife was murdered.
And they're like, hey, John, do you think maybe you could have led with that? We've been talking to you for hours now, and we're just hearing about your murdered first wife, and now you've got a murdered second wife. What's going on?
Yeah, and when the detective says, like, well, that's pretty important, like, sarcastically, he's like, I agree, it is important. Like, the way he's telling it, it's like, you just want to strangle the guy.
1996. I had a wife at that time. She was murdered.
That's kind of important.
I think it's important too.
I got a question for you, Kateline. Let's say he led with it. There's a world where this detective's going, first thing he says when he sits down is his first wife was murdered. I mean, I didn't ask that. When is a good time to say this information if you did not? Well, first, when should he have said it as the murderer of the first wife? When should he have told them?
I think he was right to not tell them. But an innocent person would probably have said through sobbing tears, how is this happening again?
That's what I think. I think the key is, if this is actually just a coincidence and your second wife is murdered, when those cops show up, you're screaming through tears, what the hell, this again, right? I mean, that's the time when you'd be saying it.
Yeah.
Oh, it was also funny in that interrogation, they told John he was not a suspect. They, like, said that straight up.
You are not a suspect.
I think they told him that to get him to open up more, to put him at ease and make him feel like he could spill the beans and talk freely because he's not under any suspicion. I mean, I certainly would be more forthcoming if I knew I wasn't being looked at.
That's true.
I wouldn't be looked at, Kurt, because I don't murder.
True. And your ass would not be in that interrogation room without your lawyer next door.
No, I wouldn't be. Why did John go in there without a lawyer?
That's a great question.
I think people think it makes them look innocent. Sure, I'll come help.
Yeah, and this is what every cop would tell you, is they go in there because they think they're smarter than them. And they're going to go in there and outsmart the cops. And in this scenario, I agree with that. I feel like John Peake walked in there going, I got this. Don't worry. I did this 9 years ago. Let's do it again.
I got away with it once. I'll get away with it again.
This is a whole subgenre of Datelines that we've talked about, the hubris, where you get away with one murder, shockingly, and then you go, well, hell, it worked the first time. And then they get busted on the second one. I mean, our OG is, Harold Henthorne.
He did the exact same things from start to finish with both wives.
Okay, we go back 10 years. His first wife, Carol. Carol and her friend Maggie are out to dinner, but they did not come home. John calls 911 and says, hey, my wife, Carol, and her friend have not returned. They're supposed to be out to dinner, but I don't know where they are, and I'm really worried. The first detective, his name is Eddie Herman. He's already suspicious at this point, right?
At that time, I just felt like I needed to go down there.
The fact that it was made so early, the report was giving you a weird feeling.
It was way too early. And also, he didn't check everywhere. He didn't have to because he had murdered them. But it wasn't like enough time for him to even... Like, I went here, I looked here, I called here. He didn't do any of that. He just called the police because he knew they were dead.
Okay, so John Peake is guilty of murder, but also saying lies that he should have not said. And this first one is, he goes, oh, I wish I knew where her friend lived, because then we could go check there. But he says, oh, I don't know where that is.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when the detectives do find Maggie's house, which they found because they all worked at Lockheed Martin together, right?
The cops went and the security guard at the front desk was able to pull up her address for them.
Yeah. So they go over to Maggie's house. Walk us through what they find when they get in there, Kate.
They find Carol dead, and then remind me how she was beaten. She wasn't shot. She was beaten.
She was beaten to death with what appears to be a claw hammer. That's the weapon of choice in today's episode. Claw hammer.
Right. And then they walk further down the hall looking for Maggie, and they find Maggie in the back room, also beaten to death.
But
horrifically.
So there's two bodies, but Carol is the one that has like 73 wounds or something. And then Maggie has 1 or 2. So they're thinking that
it looks like Carol was the target and Maggie was a witness that they had to get rid of.
The detective finds Maggie's body first, right?
No.
He finds Carol's first.
Yeah, because Maggie's in the back room.
So which one do you think he killed first?
Carol.
So at that point, Maggie's screaming and screaming, going like, get away from her. And then she's probably like, I'm going to call the cops.
I think Maggie was a lot older.
Yeah, 20 years.
She was like a grandma.
Yeah.
So I don't know that he really thought that she was much of a threat. He probably thought, I'll get to her after.
Right. Okay.
Because if he had gone for Maggie first, Carol was a lot more spry. She could have run out the door or called the cops first or something. But he may have even shut Maggie in that back room.
Yeah.
And then came back out to kill Carol.
He's doing this all with a friggin' hammer. Wow.
It was awful. It was definitely a lot of trauma.
So when they go back and find Maggie's body, there's something in her hand. There might be a clue we got here. There's a little piece of paper in her hand, and this happens to be, looks like some sort of purchase order from Lockheed Martin where they worked. So this seems like a pretty great clue. We should really hang on to this note.
Yes.
Looks like we're off to a great start on solving this. That's what John Peaks thinks.
Right, because the note has the name of a coworker on it.
Yep. Which will...
Like Maggie's trying to tell people something.
Yeah.
Like perhaps this man whose name is written on this note is the one murdering me currently as I hold this.
Yeah.
John.
Dumb, because also...
Bro, what?
Dude, Maggie was retired at that point.
She was 64 and by then retired.
So why would she be the one with the paper in her hand for where they work? It's dumb as hell. And this all starts to crumble on them when they start talking to family members of Carol and Maggie. And for one, they're going, well, John definitely knows the address because he installed a VCR over here. So there's lie number one. Donezo.
And that detective's instincts were correct. He knew from the jump that John was shady, and he maintained that point of view for a decade. But he just couldn't get enough together.
We were talking to Maggie's family, and Maggie's granddaughter is on Dateline. And why do you think she was cracking me up, Kate? Because she had a little Nick Shaughnessy in her.
Father didn't tell me any intentions with it.
It's because she didn't say grandma, okay? She called her grandmother. Right?
And it wasn't like my grandmother. It was grandmother. Like that was her first name. Her first name was grandmother.
That is wild.
The police had called and said that they needed to get into grandmother's house.
John again goes down and talks to Detective Eddie Herman. Just like this murder, he's totally cool to go down there and talk it up. What John says he does that night is that he had been at a drive-thru to Wendy's.
Went to Wendy's, picked up salad and baked potatoes.
This is the second or third time Wendy's has been used as a lie for an alibi on our show.
You're right. It's the third time.
It's happened before. Yeah. I don't know what it is about Wendy's. They're like, this will work. They'll buy it because I'm being that specific and I'm not saying McDonald's.
Totally.
She also made a point, too, though, to say, if you'll just go look in my truck, there's a Wendy's receipt in there. So you'll know by looking at that I couldn't have done it.
So on that piece of paper that they took out of Maggie's dead hand was the name Barry Webb. So naturally, the cops are dying to talk to this Barry Webb. What's funny is Barry Webb's dying to talk to them. He had called them and said, please let me come in. I've got shit to tell you. And we hear some of this talk with Barry Webb, and I gotta say, they were suspicious of him as hell.
I think they had every right to be skeptical because both of these dudes are shady in their own right.
What's Barry Webb getting up to?
The fact that he is calling and like begging to come in and wants to be providing the information, that's kind of always a red flag. Like murderers do that.
Okay, yeah.
Now we know he was completely innocent, but I can see why they're like, okay, let me get a pen.
Is that your signature on it? It's your name. I don't even make my R's like that. I'd be seriously concerned, Barry, to get 2 or 3 days into this murder case and to find out that you and her had some type of relationship that I would have a problem. You understand that?
So Barry goes in there and they're grilling him and he's like, no, I didn't have a relationship with Carol. No, I didn't kill her. But anyway, guys, detectives, listen up. Let me tell you why I'm here. Because my house was broken into by someone and I caught him. And when I said, what are you doing here? This person said, I'm watching you. What are you thinking right now, Kate?
I'm thinking, well, that's got to be John Peake.
Well, it does so happen that break-in was the night of the murder, okay? So that's pretty crazy. And I love the way they described it too, because this stupid guy who's breaking in thinks he's being slick because he like made a noise. So Barry Webb wakes up and he doesn't see anybody, but there's a door open. So he goes out the side door and he's like looking around for somebody and he hears the door behind him slowly start to shut. Like this is like a fucking cartoon of this guy trying to escape and he's like, no. And that's when he confronts him and the guy runs off with a bag and he's got like it sounds like metal is in there or something.
The bag had something in there like a metallic clinking type sound.
Clank, clank, clank.
And Barry Webb is in there with the cops going, and I know who did it because he called me later and told me about it. You might be familiar with him. His name's John Peake.
The intruder was John Peake.
What? So that means that his friend and coworker, John Peake, broke into his house. And what was the reason he gave to Barry? Why did he say he was in there?
Oh, why did he say? I mean, I know why he was. He needed to get the murder weapons to then make it seem like Barry did it. But what did he tell the cops?
Yeah. He was there to plant evidence, but what he told Barry, here's what he told Barry. He said, listen, I'm looking for Carol and I don't know where she is. That's why I'm in your house. Now, when he's telling this to the cops, they're going, but wait, he didn't call 911 yet. He's breaking into people's houses to look for his wife. That's weird. And then also, John did not mention that that's what he was up to the night of the murder.
Another omission from John.
So this is it's like, now we got to talk John again. But at that point, he'd friggin' lawyered up. This was for the first case. This happened in like 96. And we've already said it. This thing goes cold. And it sucks because listen to all that evidence. Like the guy lied about breaking in.
The detective was squirming. He wanted to nail John and he just couldn't.
Yeah, and he said that the case never went cold. And he's like, oh yeah, why do you say that? And he's like, well, I would periodically go knock on his door, which I love. Love that. And then he said, and one time I saw him jogging.
One time I was jogging down at the river trail and I saw him.
Did you try to talk to him?
I did. I ran up behind him.
That's pretty good, right?
He wanted John to know. He had his eye on him. He can run, but he can't hide.
Exactly. Now, he framed it as I was pissed that he could be out there jogging and living life. That's true. But I did he had to make John Peake sweat it right there. The detective was just running behind you.
For sure.
But anyway, you know what? John Peake's not affected because he gets big old payout of insurance, doesn't he? For like $750,000.
He does.
He goes to a party a few years later and meets a nice woman named Casey. They hit it off. They get married.
I think this is the scariest part of all of this. He met Casey at a party. His friend brought him there. Mm-hmm. That's when you meet somebody and you meet them because they're a friend of a friend, that's supposed to be safe. They are vouching for that person.
Good point.
You let your guard down because you're like, oh, he's in the circle. He's cool. Not a murderer. Nope. He's a murderer.
Yeah. Boy, that's true. That's true. I wonder who that friend was.
Do you think that friend is feeling guilty? He's got to be.
She felt like she hit the jackpot.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So John used the money he got from his insurance payout to buy he and Casey a big old mansion. And Casey's friends were talking about it, how beautiful it was. And I mean, it was okay. It was just it's just a McMansion. It's not even that big. It was like 5 bedrooms. Like, okay, that's... Any cul-de-sac has a 5-bedroom house. Like, that's not... But it didn't matter because their marriage hit the skids at some point.
Well, yeah, I mean, they have 4 happy years. Wait, back when they were at the house, they stopped themselves from saying a good place to have kids running around because neither of them had kids. Did you hear that?
Perfect place to have.
And the neighborhood had this beautiful interest.
But we got the scoop on Casey from these 2 friends. Did you like these ladies? From the Atlanta Ski Club. Apparently there's a ski club in Atlanta that they belong to. Did you know you could ski in Atlanta, Kate? Hey, Atlanta expert Kateline. Did you know that?
Well, there are mountains in Georgia. I don't know if they're any good, but I mean, you can ski on any hill that has snow on it.
Well, you got me there. I never would have imagined, but apparently there was, and that's where all the cool people of Smyrna would hang out, right?
Is there skiing where you live?
In Michigan, if you drive to Michigan, there's these little tiny hills. Yeah.
I would not think that Michigan had slopes because there are no mountains.
Well,
but yeah, hills.
Okay, if I showed you a picture of those hills, you would scoff your ass off and go like, that is a hill. Like even the Black Diamond Hill, you'd be like, that looks like a bunny hill to me.
You're gonna have a bad time.
I don't ski or snowboard, so I don't care. However, a little insight into my past. There was a time where I wanted people to think that I was a snowboarder.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wait, just in spirit? Like you wanted that to be a thing that people knew you for, but you didn't want to have to like do it.
I did it twice, and I was bad at it, and I hated it, but I liked the clothing.
Yeah.
So I would wear all the Billabong and the Burton and all that stuff.
Been there.
Yeah. It was like when PacSun was just surf and snow gear, and I was like dripping in O'Neill, Rip Curl. I mean, those are all surfing brands, but they had snow stuff too.
You haven't said the key brand for me in this era because I was right there with you. Not pretending to be a snowboarder. I was pretending to be a skateboarder because I was wearing Airwalk and all the stuff. I was all about it. Okay.
I had some maroon suede Airwalks. They were tight. You know what?
Okay, where are we at? What's up?
You heard it here first, folks. I'm gonna find a pair of suede airwalks. It's time to bring them back.
Do it. There are shoes in style now that are from that same genre of shoe. There's like a one shoe with like a white wavy line where I'm like, that's just a wannabe Airwalk vibe.
Mm-hmm.
Why is not Airwalk back in this? Because remember, Airwalk had like, they got crazy with it. They had tennis ball Airwalks. Remember the tennis ball Airwalks? No. So now we're back with current day of 2005, where they're looking into the Casey case. And John, forgot to mention that the detective, when John says, oh, by the by, my first wife was murdered too. Okay, see ya. He hits up that old detective and says, hey, you ever heard of this guy, John Peake?
And that detective is like, sir, I have been waiting for this phone call for 10 years.
Yep.
Let me tell you a little something about John Peake.
And just as dead silent as that, I was like, I thought maybe we dropped the phone.
I remember it like it was yesterday.
And this was great to see because these are two detectives from two different sections of Smyrna or Atlanta or whatever, and they're working together. Like there's no guff about like, well, we didn't get the info or whatever. Like when these two team up, they are dedicated now to bringing this guy down together.
Mm-hmm. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it seemed like when the old detective got the call from the new detective, that was kind of the impotence to make him feel like he could charge John. Because he didn't have any new evidence per se, but the fact that there was momentum behind investigating him and knowing that he may have done this again, he was like, all right, we're just going to charge him. Because he got charged for that first murder before they charged him for the second one.
Yeah, I mean, that's what's crazy. To bring charges forth, they do charge him with this first one. But it's, as AC points out, it's with the same information that they presented to the DA 9 years ago.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, hey, different eyes. So the DA back then was like, not enough, get me more. DA now is like, bring it on.
Got a different set of eyes looking at it. Those of us that were looking at it decided we did have enough and that it wasn't going to get any better.
But what's wild, that's what they charge him with. But when we get to the trial, which we'll talk about later, they use the current one. That's what's weird, right? They flip it again.
Yeah, which you're not supposed to do.
The DA decided he had enough and charged John Peake with Casey's murder.
So now that we're back at Casey, I have another question for you. When they found her, they said she looked terrified and her eyes were open. You know where I'm going with this. How is it determined if your eyes are closed when you're murdered? What's up? I've seen plenty of people murdered in a state of shock. Eyes are closed.
I don't know.
But isn't that weird that sometimes your eyes are still open?
I thought you were going to tell me.
No, I don't know. I'm asking. Because what is it that keeps the eyes open? Because there's plenty of dead bodies where they're closed. I thought that would automatically happen. Rigor mortis set in the eyelids right away? Like,
maybe it's gravity. If the body is rolled to the side, it's more likely that they'll close. If they're on their back, they'll stay open.
Yeah, like one of those baby dolls. With, you know what I'm talking about? Where their eyes...
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Creepy.
Okay, let's rewind back to the courtship of Casey by John. They get married about 2000. At first, it's good, and the friends all like him, but then it gets a little stale, and Casey's worried that John's cheating on him, because he got this job with Habitat for Humanity, which is kind of funny, but that made him have to be out of town all the time, being a consultant.
Sure.
And then, so there's Casey, suspicious of her husband, looking through the credit card receipts, and what she see... but a credit card charge for a hotel in town by John.
So
what's Casey
This
do?
was badass
Yep.
on her part because she sees that the receipt was from like the charge on the report was from like that day or like the night before.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, he's on a work trip. What is this? She goes to the hotel. She badgers the front desk.
Mm-hmm.
She wants his room number. They won't give it to her, but she doesn't let up. She explains the situation. Finally, they tell her the room number. She goes up there, bangs on the door, is yelling at him. He doesn't open the door. He and whoever he's inside with stay quiet. But she knows because the front desk just gave him up. She knows.
Look, it was a badass move. I wanted her to stick around because they had to leave through that door. Whoever was in there was going to have to walk out that door at some point. So I would have gone, like, because security came up or whatever, I would have said, I'm not going to say a word, but I'm standing here. You can't stop me. I'm seeing who leaves this door. Because out would have walked John and his lover.
She should have knocked on the door and stayed to the side so that the peephole wouldn't show her. And she was saying, like, John, I know you're in there. If she had just done knock, knock, knock,
Yeah.
room service, he would have answered.
Yeah.
And she would know that it was him. Because he wouldn't have opened the door necessarily, but he would have yelled, like, go away.
So it turns out old John Peake was in there with a woman. Her name is Lisa, with a Z, Lisa. Now we got to talk about her because she's a big part of this case.
Her name was Lisa Kent. The detectives had a love triangle on their hands.
The whole time we're talking about this other woman, we're seeing a picture of her. One picture of her, right?
Yes.
That's it. And so in my head, I'm going, well, she's not playing ball with this. Like, she doesn't want anything to do with this Dateline. They got some picture of her somewhere. That's gotta be what happens. But what happens, Kate?
Surprise.
What happens?
They interview her. She's there, and she is telling all.
And
I liked her.
I loved her, and I loved how Dateline sprung it on us, because they cut to her talking after seeing that picture for like the 5th time, and then they say she was willing to talk to us, and I was just like, AC, boom!
So he's throwing you under the bus in that interview room.
Yes. It didn't work. Lisa told us what the detectives told her.
That's the Dateline shit I love. Because that had me floored, really. I gasped. I was like, I can't believe they got her. But Lisa's there giving us the scoop.
Mm-hmm.
And the cops are like, well, sounds like we got to talk to this Lisa, because she loves guns and stuff, and she's chasing John around the house. I mean, she sounds like a real loose cannon. So they bring Lisa in, and how does her interrogation?
She explains to them that John told her that he was divorcing Casey. She and John were the real deal, and that she had no idea.
Do you mean that he was seeing her?
Oh, absolutely. They were dating.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And been dating on Tuesday nights for quite a while.
Oh, so that's what he has been doing on Tuesday nights.
He was just lying to both of them completely.
Yeah, and when we first hear the tapes of Lisa in there, they're trying to make it sound like maybe she is guilty. But I think everything she said in there points to her innocence.
Oh, yeah. They were trying to talk to her about the guns. And she's like, yeah, I mean, I grew up with guns. I've shot guns. And they're like, do you have one? And she's like, yeah, I have one. I haven't picked it up in years. Like, it's been a while since I shot it. And she really was not showing any signs of being like this jealous gun nut who was out for blood.
Right, and she seems like she's helpful from the jump, because when they say that Casey was murdered, your boyfriend's ex, you think, she goes, excuse me, can you tell me what caliber it was? That was her first question to them. Now that to me is smart, and these dummies, these cops are a little shook by it. They go, we don't know. They knew it was 30, right? They knew it when they found the bullet. That's them lying.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question? Do they know what caliber pistol? You said it was a pistol.
We're not sure.
But anyway, I'm going, okay, Lisa sounds innocent to me. So then Lisa tells them about this time that John asked if she could ever shoot anybody. And AC loved this. Do you remember what she said? Again, I think it's just utterly honest. She goes, and I told him, and he asked me this recently, if I could disassociate enough, maybe I could do it. Maybe I could shoot somebody. And AC's like, disassociate?
Yeah, I took that to mean that self-defense, she could do it. If someone broke into her house, she could shoot them, but she doesn't want to shoot somebody that she knows personally.
For them, I might be able to disassociate from that.
Disassociate? Was she saying she might be capable of murder?
I guess when you present it like they did, it sounds like a crazy thing to say in an interrogation, but I just think it's a level of honesty that, like, it would be so dumb of them to say that if they did shoot him, right? Like, she's giving these weird specifics, like, I could shoot somebody if I had to. What caliber was it? I'm familiar with calibers. Fill me in. Like, I don't know. I loved all that.
Lisa was allowed to leave.
We didn't talk about, there's a third detective in this who looked kind of funny. Do you know what I'm talking about? There's a guy with a mustache and a nose on him that if he could never wear black framed glasses because it would look like a disguise. You know what I'm talking about?
It would look like that emoji.
Yeah. That guy had a wild look. And there's a point where he's wearing like wraparound Oakleys where I was like, this is kind of there. I'm kind of laughing. Now, all of Casey's friends were bummed that she got back with him.
We also learned that he tried to pull some insurance stuff with her too. Like a week before she died, didn't he change the insurance payout?
Well, he suggested to Casey that she get life insurance. And so she did. And it was a family member of Casey's, which we'll be talking about, had told her, don't do it. You don't have kids. Why would you have insurance? Great point. But let's talk about them because they're probably the all-stars. And that is Jackie, Don, and David. Now, that sounds like the name of a throuple. We got 3 people in there. Jackie, Don. That's one person. Her name is Jackie Don. What do you think, Kateline?
I've never heard that name. It kind of reminded me of Dateline from the Menendez case. And I'd never heard that name, and I've never heard the name Jackie Don, and it's crazy.
Casey's sister Jackie Don and brother-in-law David Kruger.
There's a point later where they're talking to John, and he's like crying. And when he says Jackie Don earnestly, it just sounds wild to me.
Well, AC said it earnestly, too. At no point was AC like, and her name is Jackie Don. She just says it like Jackie Don, like her name's Sarah.
Yeah, that was definitely a first for me. But I love these two. I love Jackie Don. I love David in suspenders and his no-nonsense attitude. They've got John's number. And as David points out, it's because of probability. And so they're suspicious as hell of this guy.
This is a matter of probabilities. One guy, 2 wives, 2 murders, just no.
John goes to the funeral. He goes to this stuff. Funeral, by the way, same friggin' church that Carol's funeral is at.
So gross.
So he goes to all these things, and he had approached Jackie Don and David and said, let's go have coffee so we can clear the air. That was all his idea. So what do Jackie Don and David do? What's their game plan now?
David gets Jackie Don to wear a wire to record the whole coffee meeting. And then they're going to badger him with questions.
And it's so...
And they do it. And they're so cute about it.
Yep.
They're like, they feel like CIA agents or something.
It's adorable because David's like, now again, I'm going to say it again, let him speak. He's preconditioned to want to defend himself or whatever. And I was like, David, you're dead on. You're right.
Right, because we hear, they start recording while he's wiring her up. So we hear her being like, I'm going to go record my friend's husband.
And she says like...
Gosh darn.
She says something like G. Willikers or something right there where it's wild.
I can't believe that I'm going to talk to my brother-in-law with a secret wiretap thing. Good grief.
So they throw on the mic, and David's like, okay, don't be accusatory, okay? We gotta, like, kind of pretend to be on his side. And Jackie Don's like, can it be a skeptical support? And David's like, well, just let him talk.
Can it be a skeptical audience?
Yeah, but let your skepticism be silent.
And how does Jackie Don do in this 3-hour lunch they have with John? What's her attitude?
She's pretty skeptical. She is not...
Going after him.
She's going hard.
What do you want to know from me? I told the police everything.
You never told Casey everything. You lied to her up to the last minute. You never admitted the adultery, and you were living with the other woman the whole time.
Is she the all-star?
I'm giving it to them both. How's that sound? Jackie Don and David. I feel like they're a pair. They're a pair here.
Sure.
But I do, like, she is grilling this guy and going like, okay, 1 wife, but 2, John? Give me a break.
2 dead wives? 2 dead wives, John, for crying out loud. And, you know, I never thought there was anything suspicious about Carol. But there's something damn suspicious about Casey's murder.
And John, this piece of shit, has the nerve to start crying and saying like, no, but that's what hurts me the most, Jackie Don, is that you don't believe me.
Jackie Don, I love this woman. I still love this woman. I didn't kill her. And that hurts more than anything else.
Oh my God. And also John offers up this information. More stupid info, dude. Keep to yourself. That they were going to renew their vows on one condition. What was that condition?
What was it? I don't remember.
They could renew their vows, but they had to wear the same outfits they wore at the first wedding.
Right.
Insinuating that you got to lose weight to fit in your dress again.
He was really weird about her weight. He always had her feeling self-conscious, so she was on weird diets and stuff, and told her friends all about that.
She got liposuction.
She got liposuction. And he still didn't want to really get back together with her. Her friends are like, they hate him, and they knew all about this. And Jackie Don's like, I don't know if she said it, but I know she was thinking, like, well, if you guys were going to renew your vows, she would have told us because she tells us everything. And that wasn't, you're just saying that. You're lying.
And he's, well, it was like 2 weeks ago or something. Like, he's real defeated there because he's got to realize, like, oh no. They see right through it. Like, Jackie Don's not going to let anything through.
If we're going to renew our vows, we have to say it in the same outfits we had on before.
So. Oh, I'm sure that went over real well.
And even David says, because they go, we know that was a big deal for you, her weight. And she goes, and John Peake is like, oh no, I always told her she was beautiful. That was never the case. And David's like, but you told her she had to lose weight to renew your vows. So which one is it, dude?
She always thought that was a big deal with you.
It wasn't. It really wasn't. I always told her she was beautiful.
Well, why make that a condition if you felt that way?
Another point for David.
Also, we see photos of Casey, and like, there's nothing wrong with her weight. I mean, there's nothing wrong with anybody's weight. What was he seeing when he looked at her?
Yeah, you're right. There's nothing wrong with anybody's weight. But I would go as far to say every picture we see of Casey, she's around the same weight as the previous picture. Like, it wasn't like she put on 100 pounds.
Right.
And John Peake is like a prick about it. Like, I don't know what he's arguing for. Like, she looks the same in all the pics.
Yeah. He's a real piece of shit.
Yep. All right, so now we got a trial brewing. But while this trial's brewing, Jackie, Don, and David, they say, no, we got one more move to cement our status as all-stars. And that's they file a civil suit against John Peake with the sole intention of that allowing the cops to dig into his finances. That's smart shit.
Mm-hmm.
That was a good move. I've never thought to do that for that purpose.
Yeah.
But, I mean, now it makes total sense. Even the cops are like, and it was fairly well hidden because we didn't have it, but it was good that they did that and gave it to us.
They got a lot of financial documents that had been relatively well hidden from the police and from our office, and they shared those with us.
So smooth. That's where they find out all the insurance stuff. That's how they find out he was making payments where if she didn't make a payment, he would make the payments secretly.
Mm-hmm. To keep the coverage going.
John.
That is sneaky.
All right, so where are we at now? We at the trial?
Yeah.
Night before the trial, though, and this was a cliffhanger in the app. I mean, I knew it was BS. And when they said that there was a shocker and all this, again, my first thought is, if they start talking about deals right now, I'm going to lose it. But it wasn't that. It was that a prisoner had confessed, no, this person is the one who killed her.
Right. And they very quickly figured out that guy had been cellmates with John, and John paid him to say that.
Yeah.
That probably took 10 minutes to make a phone call.
Yeah, it's so...
And figure that out.
He's trying to talk his brother into saying he's a good guy. And he's like, is that something you'd be a good candidate for? To lie under oath? Sure, bro. But his brother was like, yeah, I'll do it. Anyway, he sucks. We're hearing all these calls.
I need someone to break through this and say, okay, hey, John is innocent. Would you be a candidate for that? Yeah.
We don't buy it that this other prisoner wants to kill him. So now this is charges added on. And actually, this does go to Deal Town because he wants to avoid the death penalty. Right? He says they have him on there saying guilty.
How do you plead to the charge? Guilty or not guilty?
Guilty, sir.
That's fine.
Yeah, and they show... So all this went down in like mid-aughts, right? And John Peake is a total dweeb and a dork, and his voice is funny to me. And I hate his guts. They show him a picture of him in prison now in his 70s. He looks like a lifer, doesn't he? Doesn't he look like a real prison guy? He's got like the goat handlebar and like tattoos and a shaved... I'm not saying he looks cool or anything, but he looks like a prisoner now.
Yeah, it's probably a little bit of self-preservation. You got to play the game if you're going to be in there for the rest of your life.
Yeah. I wonder if he altered his voice a little bit. Maybe he talks lower. He's got it, right?
Definitely. Yeah, because those photos of him from his 40s, yeah, he's like a little... He
was such a dork.
He worked at Lockheed. He's like a little engineer nerd.
They say that still to this day, 20 years later, he's still trying to pay people to say that they did it. Like, so he's still...
Sad.
Trying to play that same card here. Okay, before we go to those lists, I gotta say one thing. This is the... It's not in a segment because the guy did it right. But do you remember the part where AC says to the detective about how John has two ladies in his lives and he wants to keep them both? Mm-hmm. AC goes, he wanted to have his cake and eat it too.
He wants to have his cake and eat it too.
Now we know that usually the other person on the other end of this is going to repeat it or say something stupid.
Yep.
Did Brody kind of want his cake and eat it too?
Yeah, I would say even beyond that is he thought he could.
Old Detective Waddell, he responds
100%, yes, every slice.
Boom! That's the perfect answer. He played it right. Oh, I was pumped for AC in that moment.
I bet AC was like, thank you, sir.
Yeah, that was such a home run for me. I'm like, that's how easy it is, everybody. See how easy this is just to play ball, just to go with it? Like, do you really need to correct the saying?
Yes, and.
Yes.
You gotta yes and it.
Boom. Another thing that John did to plant these seeds, besides trying to throw his buddy under the bus with the note in her hand, his wife got a threatening letter at work that was like, I'm going to kill you if you do something. And she tried to play it off like it was nothing, but good old John insisted.
Right. I love that she was like, this isn't real.
I mean, it never is in these scenarios. Like when it was with Mark Jensen, it was the same thing of like, these wives are just living a life and doing their thing. There's nothing shady at all. They would get a note like this and think, what are they referring to? Like, it's not, right? Like, it's not even a threat to them.
Yeah.
And of course, John's like, and I took it straight to administration. He didn't take it to the cops, though. That's for sure. But he had to make sure he had it on the book somewhere that he could prove that she got this letter.
But he insisted that Lockheed Security be notified.
Dumb as hell. Are we onto those lists, Kate?
Well, we are, but Kate's unnamed list. My list is completely blank.
You got nothing tonight, huh?
I got nothing.
Okay.
I still loved it, though.
It was great. That reveal of Lisa was so dope and on point. That was so awesome to me. I like, hat tip to AC, to the production. Well f***ing done. Like, they knew they only had that one photo, and they're like, we're going to play with these fools. Old Kurt Money's going to spin in his seat when he sees this. This is going to be great. And I did.
Let's hear your list.
Oh! Time out, Kate. Gotta rewind for a sec. We talked to a friend of Carol, the AC talks to, and she's saying how John is sleazy, and how the reason, her proof that he's sleazy, is that they were on a camping trip and he kept wanting to take a shower with her. Do you remember this?
I do, vaguely, yeah.
And AC's response, I forget this woman's name, but her response to AC is awesome, because AC goes,
Like, did he want you to, like, take your clothes off and take a shower?
She's like,
well, that was sort of the implication.
Yeah. You can't do that, John.
Oh. Anyway, okay, all right, on to Kurt's Kick-Ass List.
Kick-Ass List.
Something out of a movie. Old Eddie Herman says it.
You can't make this up. I mean, this is like straight out of a movie.
I thought the one friend was about to say it because she said something out of a nightmare. It was in like the cold open and stuff.
Horror. Am I in a nightmare? You know, it's just absolute gut punch.
She threw me for a loop there. There's one more that I forgot when I was watching and I didn't have anything to write down. But hey, those are two things on my list. That's pretty sweet. What do you think?
Maybe future Kurt will pop in and tell us.
Possibly. Future Kurt here. Current Kate is correct. Absolutely correct. I did miss one. Current Kurt did miss a big one, because turns out this fool, John, he had like a library of 50 to 60 tapes, the guy says, of different murder shows. And we almost get a Dateline mentioned by name.
50 or 60 different tapes of multiple different shows that, similar to the one that we're doing here.
But this is definitely on Kurt's kick-ass list. So, back to you, Current Kurt. Oh, and I just talked to Future Kate. She's looking for those friggin' airwalks. Can't find them anywhere. The ones they're making now are duds. They stink. And they're only available at JCPenney. So, that's a bummer. But anyway, back to the app. Alright, well, that's the end of the app. Another great one, I feel. We're back in the swing of things.
We're in the groove.
I hope it continues with this next app. Hold heads, remember to check us out on video. You can see that on YouTube or Spotify if you want to watch it in a little square thing. It's a little weird on Spotify, to be honest. But I think the video's a lot of fun. And so go to our YouTube, I'm Lester Holt, to see that. Yeah. And never mind, no griping. And on that note, I'm Kurt Money.
I'm Kateline.
I'm Lester Holt. For all of us, I'm Lester Holt. Good night.
Sneaky, sneaky.